What's up, folks? Be sure to sign in. Let me know where you're watching from this morning and share this video with somebody. Hope y'all have a great Christmas. Hey, Jazz, man. Y'all too, man. Hope y'all have a great Christmas. On that end, let's see here. Florence, what's up? What, Paris, what's up? Ah. Now this is actually a serene bass, a serene. So what I'm doing this morning, as you can hear, I'm playing around with Daryl Jones, drummer. I follow him on Instagram and just got a really unique style. If any of you have heard that song before, you know that's an old gospel song. It doesn't have any music to it, acapella, obviously. And he just put his twist on it. So I heard it and it inspired me to just kind of pull it out and play around with it this morning. So just playing through a few ideas. You know, it's good to kind of take something and take a different approach on it from what the norm is and just play around, see what kind of ideas. It's nothing I'm trying to perfect or anything like that. I don't have any technical things I'm working through this morning. It's just really just taking a concept, taking an idea, and see how many different places I can go with it. Because you could take a really, with this particular thing, you could take a really mellow, pretty approach, or you could take something that's real neo soul. Obviously, I'm playing around with that laid back drag timing thing that's happening, and also playing straight over it. So I'm not putting too. I don't want. I'm trying to explain what I'm doing, but at the same time, I'm not trying to put too much thought into it while I'm playing. I've been playing around a little while before I went live this morning, but not a lot. I was playing around on my 4 string, but this is really my first notes of the morning here on the 6 string, just kind of warming my hands up and just getting comfortable with what I'm hearing. Pretty much, I'm in Connecticut. I'm outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So yep, that's where I am. What's up, man? I took it off loop. I must have took that off a loop. So I was just looping the section. I wasn't playing the entire song. So let's get back here. All right, find this loop section. All right, here we go. What's that? I missed the question. All right, so Turner family, what's up? Who else I miss? All right, I think I got everybody. Oh, Boonville, Mississippi. Michael, what's up, man? What tips would you give on best practice techniques? Best practice tech. I mean, it's hard to say what's the best anything. Just good practice techniques. I mean, just working on first thing, learning your fretboard. After getting through the initial getting comfortable around, knowing your like notes and stuff like that, learn the fretboard, learn where everything is so you can learn multiple places. I think that helps with everybody wants to be fast. Everybody wants to play things that are really, really fast. But I think one of the biggest things is kind of getting comfortable with your fretboard, knowing where stuff is on the bass so that you can do it here, or you can do it getting comfortable with your fretboard so you know where everything is and you can do it comfortably no matter where you start. Like if you start in a line, you could start that line in any position coming out of a chord, coming out of a different phrase of the song, so you can kind of get comfortable with knowing your way around. And that's the biggest thing I would tell you. And everything else after that you can work on. I mean, of course, you're going to be working on scales, major, minor, pentatonic. You really pick and choose what you really want to work on, depending on what you're trying to develop at the time. Because I'm constantly trying to grow in some area. You'll never know it all. I don't think you will anyway. Even if you somewhat master the instrument, there's still something that you may have missed or something new that you can learn. It might be some new technique that someone came up with. So just as far as practicing, just getting really familiar with your instrument and learning as you're learning your instrument and really getting to know it, getting to know your own sound. What is that? What does that look like? What do you want that to become in developing your own sound? Cleaning up the stuff. Of course, I've talked about a lot of times transcribing and all that kind of stuff, meaning sitting down. I don't literally mean sitting down and writing out solos. If you play by reading, and if you want to do that, that's great too. But most of my stuff, you guys know, I deal heavily with ear training. So if you want to dig in and start breaking down these records that you're hearing and working on your ears, that's another thing, as well as learning your fretboard, being able to work with your ears. I did a live lesson with someone the other day. It was part of my coaching calls. Just in case, I think I mentioned this last week, but I opened my coaching calls up. So if you guys are looking to sit down and talk with me as it relates to the coaching calls, I have also opened these up to where that time that we could spend doing the coaching call, it can also be a one-on-one session. Obviously, I'm very limited when it comes to space on that. So if you're trying to get in on that, I'd advise you to go ahead and take advantage of that now, because my time is very, very limited. And the other thing is, my time is very valuable, which brings us to our point today. I don't give out my time to a lot of people simply because everyone doesn't value your time. I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a minute. But really, I found out that one of the students that I was working with in one of the lessons, he was having trouble just trying to come up with certain things. And I noticed he was doing some of the stuff that I used to do when I first started playing, and it was like second guessing almost everything he was doing. And I think it's that intimidation factor when somebody else tells you what to play. Now you're trying to feel like I was telling him to play a particular thing, and he was kind of searching for it when I've heard him play before, and I know he could go right to this stuff. He started second guessing himself and started searching for stuff, and it's like not being comfortable or completely confident in what it is that he does well. So now when I was somewhat putting the pressure on him to do a certain thing, it was like very difficult for him to find out what it was he was trying to do. And a lot of that comes from that lack of confidence, a lack of believing in yourself. And I'm gonna tell you guys, you're looking for tips and tricks on how to get better. But the biggest thing I found out that was a game changer for me, it was my mindset. You might think that might be funny. Now, after you put all the practice in, if you can't play at all and you're new, yeah, it got a lot to do with you need to do some more practicing in terms of you need to get some more miles up under your hands. You need to work on this bass a little bit more, get a little bit more comfortable with the instrument. But the thing that really made the difference for me is when I started changing my attitude, because you got to think I had been playing for years before I started playing professionally. Just goofing around on the bass because I never really took the instrument serious because I was a guitar and keyboard player. But once I finally started taking the bass serious, I struggled with a lot of those different things, seeming like I didn't know what I was doing. And the biggest thing was my perception of myself as it related to my playing. It wasn't necessarily I wasn't able to do certain things. It was my perception. Yeah, discipline has a lot to do with it as well. Let me go back to some of these comments. All right, coming from someone who's been playing since 2000, lack of practice and playing one time a week will kill your playing and progress. That destroy my playing. Yeah, it will. The lack of practice. Now, those are the obvious things. Practice, picking up your instrument, and just like really spending time on your instrument. Those are the obvious things. The things that are not so obvious, some of you may pick up your instrument every day and you're still not getting any better. There's a difference in practicing and rehearsing. Some of you guys just pick up your instrument and play the same stuff that you know all the time. You pick it up every day, but you're playing the same stuff over and over again. Now, to me, that's not really learning yourself. That's being kind of stuck in a rut. You're enjoying the instrument. That part is great that you're still enjoying an instrument, but the other part to that is like you have to really dig in to new stuff and start looking for new stuff. You got to get hungry for what it is you're wanting to do. The ones who are hungry for it, they get it because they start digging. When you get hungry for stuff, what do? When you go in the kitchen and you're hungry. And if there's nothing out on the counter or there's nothing on the stove, there's nothing already out, you start digging through the pantry, you start digging through the cabinets, you start digging through the refrigerator, you start digging, you start searching for stuff. But when it comes to our playing as musicians, we get satisfied if there's a pack of crackers on the counter or a bag of chips or something. We just eat that and we get satisfied. We don't really dig and see, hey, what kind of meal can I make? That kind of thing. Taking an idea like that and seeing what I can dig for, what can I create, what can change the same thing that I've been doing, the same old that I've been doing. Instead of just grabbing a handful of this, let me look in here. Let me go move some of this stuff out of the way in my refrigerator. Let me look in the freezer and see what I actually have that I can cook, as opposed to, and the thing about it, we want we want that good, quick fix, instead of really working on taking the time out to work. Like, it takes time out. I mean, not takes time out, but it takes time to pull food out of the refrigerator or pull food out of the freezer. And just say, if you got a pack of meat, I'm sorry for referencing food, I must be hungry. But if you got a pack of meat, you got to let that thaw out first. So you got to take that time to let it thaw. All right. As opposed to grabbing a bag of chips. You got a whole big pack of steaks here. You got to let it thaw out. You know what I'm saying? Before you can actually even cook it. And then once it finishes thawing out, you have to make sure that it's tenderized or whatever you have to do to it. You have to make sure it's seasoned. You have to make sure you have some pots clean if they're not clean. You have to go through all this process to prepare something that's going to be more filling than a bag of chips or some crackers or something like that. You got to take time out to go through the process to find this food, to thaw it out, to prepare it, and then you eat it. You don't just get to indulge into it just like you would a quick bag of chips, where you get to open it and you eat a handful of chips and you're done. It takes a little bit more time. The same thing when it comes to your playing. You have to dig. You just can't just sit there, same thing over and over again, or like you're saying earlier, just hit it once a week and move on. You have to really dig. You have to really search. So you'll find what you need to work on from week to week, because the reason why I said I don't know what's the greatest or the best technique, because it's constantly changing from week to week or from month to month, depending on how you're progressing. After you worked on this thing and you've gotten close to mastering this thing, now you see, okay, I need to be working a little bit more on my phrasing. I need to be working as you analyze yourself each week and you see the areas that you're growing in. Now you start to see, okay, I need to work on this, I need to work on that. So it's forever changing. Let's see here. Got some comments here. I'm sorry I don't have this pulled up on my computer. How do you make sure that 1 hour plan you just don't waste? How do you make that? So I think I kind of answered that when somebody was saying the discipline. How do you get the discipline? I'll come back to that. What advice would you give a bass player that constantly deals with the keyboard player that runs on the bass line all the time? That's funny. I've heard so many people talk about that. All right, so let me go back to the question that's Luda says, how do you make sure that your 1 hour plan, you basically just not sitting there wasting time in a whole hour plan? Well, you have to be strategic in that. You have to plan your practice time. If you know you only have an hour, and I've talked about this before, having some type of routine, some type of structured routine in place. So the first 15 minutes I'm going to spend, if you're trying to develop develop more discipline and develop more of a structure. All right, so the first 15 minutes of my playing, I'm going to work through scales. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to work through just kind of learning my scales. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to work through learning my scales on the bass. And for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to go up and down the fretboard, just learning my scales, being able to name all of the notes as I'm playing the scale, so I'm familiar with where the notes are on the fretboard. If you tune down, you're being aware, like my bass right now is tuned down to B flat, so you're being aware of that. Most of you guys tune standard. If you're trying to adjust, because I know this has been a topic, people were thinking about making the switch to tuning down because they play a lot of gospel music and they want that low B flat. So if you're thinking about doing that, for example, you should work on that every single week or whatever, in terms of being able to name your notes Don't just tune down and you don't have a clue as to the fretboard. Yes, you have to relearn the fretboard. Notice that everything is moved a half step down, or if you tune down to A for your low B string, everything is moved a whole step down. So you have to relearn that fretboard. So getting familiar with where all of these notes are, so you can start at any point, like I said earlier. And so the next 15 minutes, after that 15 minutes of running scales, the next 15 minutes I might, or the next 30 minutes, I might work on the material that I have to do for the week. You know, I might take a song and really dissect that stuff. So if I'm doing this every day, I'm doing an hour a day every day, which I recommend 2 hours. The more new you are to the instrument, I recommend at least 2 hours a day. And so 5 days a week, that's 10 hours a week. And that's very minimal if you're trying to get good on this instrument. That's very minimal time that you're putting on this instrument. But neither here nor there. So the next 30 minutes I would really spend on dissecting the song, taking it, you know, a few seconds at a time and really digging in there and finding out what that bass player is doing. And once you learn your part, really listen to what everybody else is doing around your part as well. Don't just learn your part and move on. And I will say this from experience, the more familiar you get with learning your part and listening to the rest of the band, the easier it becomes over time. You just naturally start hearing all the other parts around what you're doing. You still have to pay attention to them, but you start naturally paying attention to, okay, what the guitar player is doing, what the horns are doing, what the drummer is doing, what the keyboard player is doing, and that naturally gives you, a lot of you guys, I've seen, maybe not you, but some of the people that follow me on Facebook left comments. I put a post up on last week and I was talking about bass players, what are some of your biggest struggles? And I seen so many comments, and a lot of the things that people were talking about, stuff like riffs and coming up with licks and coming up with knowing how to be more aggressive and knowing what to put where and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that comes from, I hate to say it, it's a lack of listening. It's a lack of listening, because when you listen, the other music in the song will suggest some of the stuff that you can do in the song. Not that you're becoming a copycat, but you know, you can pull it real time. You can come up with a lick just by listening to what's going on in the song. I've done it countless times. So being aware of that stuff. So we have 15 minutes that we're going to start practicing in terms of running scales and that kind of stuff. Then we got 30 minutes, which put us to 45 minutes, because we're going to spend that next 30 minutes really digging in and dissecting the song. So the last 15 minutes of that time, I would say just enjoy. Find something that you really love to play. Find one of your favorite songs, or just a song in general, and just jam out to it, rock out to it, and execute and try to implement some of that stuff that you've been working on at the beginning of your practice time. So if you had some different riff or something at the beginning with your scales that you was trying to learn and that kind of thing, so you got scales or riffs or something like that that you can work through for the first 15 minutes as you're learning the fretboard. But you come back at the last 15 minutes and start trying to implement that stuff into something that you're already comfortable playing. So you're not necessarily learning a new song with the last 15 minutes. You're taking something that you already know, or just a groove that you made up, and you're starting to implement all of that different stuff. And to me, that's a good way, that's a good model. You can take it and make whatever adjustment you need to make to it. But that's a good model of taking just something and really making the most of that hour of time, so you don't waste, you don't waste that. Sorry for being long-winded on that answer. I was just trying to be as detailed as possible. All right, so what's up, Patrick from Dubai? Nathaniel, what's up, man? So you want to make sure that you're doing these things. You want to make sure that you're doing that. So yeah, what else? What other questions do you guys have before I jump and talk too much concerning the subject of your worth? What are you worth? How much are you worth? I think that's the title, right? Let's see. Did I can't see my title for now, so I think that's what I think that's what I wrote in the title. How much are you worth? And as I'm gathering my thoughts and all that kind of stuff together, y'all can drop your questions below concerning some of the stuff we've already talked about. But what is your value? How do you add value? Michael's question about keyboardists. Oh, my bad. I missed that. I'm sorry about that. Let's see here. Michael's question about the keyboard. All right. What advice would you give to a bass player that constantly deals with the keyboard player that runs the bass line all the time? I've dealt with that. a lot throughout my career, and it's just a bad habit that you run into with keyboard players that have played by themselves for a long time. It's a bad habit, and it's really, really hard to get them to stop that once they've developed that habit. Um, it's really difficult. I would say you can try talking to them and try asking them to play what they're playing up an octave. That's one approach. Asking them to play what they play up an octave. You know what I'm saying? So, because it's going to be hard if they've been used to playing by themselves, and a lot of times that's more common in the older players. Sometimes the younger players do it, but that's more common in the older musicians. They've been used to playing by themselves for years. So that's something that's going to be really, really hard for them to break. So you can ask them about playing up an octave, but if they're not as, if they're not as quick to learn stuff, that's going to be very difficult to do. So at best case scenario, you got to try to play around what it is they're playing. If you're in that situation, and most of the time that comes, I think it's arrogance. Yeah, you definitely have. Sometimes that's the case that they prefer their bass line over you. Well, you got to once again, take it into consideration. Most of the people that do that, they're either one, like you say, they are very confident that they know the bass line and they think you don't know it, or they're not confident that you're going to play it like it needs to go. So they're going to take it and run with it, and okay, this is the way the bass line should go. And so I'm going to play it because I'm not confident that you're going to play the right bass line. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. And then you have the other side of that where you have players that are just used to playing by themselves. They're not used to playing with others. And so now you're somewhat fighting them for the bass line because they're used to having to do everything themselves. You can talk to them and try to work through that as much as possible, trying to get them to, kind of get out of your lane and get them to work on using their left hand to do more chording and that kind of thing, so it frees you up. But you have to first, before you do any of that, you have to really make sure you know the music. You have to make sure you have that bass line covered, and you play it so aggressively that they kind of want to stay out of the way. They kind of want to stay out of your way and kind of let you do what you do. Because if you're really locking it down, that's going to make them want to get out of your lane, want to get out of, want to get out of your space. Because if that space is being filled, I definitely want to get back. But if you're not confident in your delivery, then, because I played keyboard before, and sometimes if I had a bass player that was playing with me years ago, if that bass player wasn't giving me what I needed, yeah, I would sometimes, hey man, I got it, don't worry about it. Especially if it's a situation where the bass player, one, don't know the song, they haven't really put the time in and practice, or they know the song and they're not giving you what you need. It's not aggressive. It's not, it don't have that any oomph to it. It's very passive. You're playing the bass line, but it's so passive. I need a little bit more something to the bass line. So when you have that going on, that's a lot of times you have the keyboard players, they'll jump in and they'll start doing it because they're missing something as far as pushing the music. Now you have to really evaluate where you are on the scope of what's going on in the music. Are you holding the music back because you're playing too passive? Or are you pushing the music and the keyboard player is holding the music back? So you gotta really be in that situation, be sensitive to the situation, and also be honest with yourself so you can really, see what's really going on there. And if you got a person that's willing to listen, if they're not too stubborn, you can probably talk to them in y'all's rehearsals or in between time, even not at the rehearsals, in between time. Hey man, I'm really trying to, dig into this bass line, but I feel like we're clashing when you're playing the same thing that I'm playing, because you're in the same register that I'm playing in, and so we're competing and it's making the music louder, so you got that kind of going for you. Like we don't want to get too out of control where the people start complaining. So if you don't mind, can you try at least moving what you're doing up an octave? If you can't move it up an octave, try just taking your left hand all the way down. If you're not going to chord with your left hand, something. So it's that kind of thing. So you just gotta be aware of it. And let me see some comments. Somebody else commented to that subject. Why notes? It's okay. I'm not gonna attempt to I think you're saying something about you don't speak English. Adamir, I'm not sure. I don't have a translation. If that's what you're asking for, I don't have a translation for this live feed, or at least I don't know how to use it. If it is a translation, anybody know anything about the translation, please help. So I've been playing bass for 2 years now, but I haven't improved. All my friends are ahead of me. What's wrong with me? Um, you're right about playing aggressively. Um, there's nothing wrong with you. It goes back to what we're talking about. Everybody, here's the thing, guys. We don't all learn the same way. And I'm so thankful there's so many different resources on YouTube and other places that you guys can learn from. We don't all learn the same way. We don't all learn at the same pace. Everybody is not robots. We don't all do everything the same way. So just because everybody else is around you may have been learning, getting everything within the first 6 to 8 months and seem like they surpass you, but you're behind everybody, that has nothing to do with you. So first off, I'm going to tell you, don't compare yourself with other people. That's the number one thing you can't do. You can't compare yourself with other people's progress. I said this on last week. It doesn't matter how fast you're moving. If you're moving, you're making progress. Well, you remember the story of the tortoise and the hare. I'm not going to go that little childhood kid story. I'm not going to go there. But the thing about it, a turtle that's moving and constantly moving, no matter how quick the rabbit gets to the finish line, if that turtle is constantly moving, he's going to get there. He might not get there at the same time as the rabbit, which is cool. I'm not trying to even reference the turtle and the hare. I'm not trying to reference that story. But the fact of the matter is, everybody doesn't get to the same place at the same time. And it might be for good reason. There are some things in your own journey that you'll learn as you're growing as a musician. I'm glad I didn't get there 4 years ago. I'm glad I didn't get to this thing then because my mind wasn't ready for it, or my playing wasn't ready for it. And had I got to this place when I thought I should have got there, I would have messed it up, or something would have happened, or anything could have happened, or the right person may not have been in place that I needed to get connected to. So there's a scripture that says, don't grow weary in well-doing. If you're putting the time in, if you're putting the energy in and doing what you know you're supposed to do as it relates to your playing, and you're getting up, you're grinding, you're going to get there. You're going to get the results. But you have to make sure, now I will say this, you have to make sure you don't give yourself a free pass. You got to get up and put in the work. You got to get up and you have to put in the work. Now, a lot of my years when it comes to my bass playing, I goofed off a lot of my years simply because I didn't take it serious. I wasn't really trying to be a bass player. So the little bit I can do, I was okay with that. So you have to make sure, and Merry Christmas to whoever that is, but you have to make sure you're putting the time in. You're not making excuses for yourself. Well, I don't have time to do this because I have this and I have that. If you really want something, you got to dig for it. You have to fight for what it is you want. You have to really get up and get at it and stop making excuses. If you are making excuses, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Make sure you're doing all you can do. And if you have done all you can do, then you've done enough. But just make sure you're doing all that you can, all that you can do. Don't make excuses. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong if you're behind everybody else. For years, I was behind everybody else. And even at points now, I feel like I'm behind everybody else. But, we're not all robots. We're not created the same. Because there might be some things that they are ahead of you in, but just say, hypothetically speaking, they might be ahead of you in the sense of their playing and their ability to play and learn music and this kind of thing. But you may be ahead of them on the business side of being a musician, for example. You may be ahead of them as an individual, as a person, working on your personality and trying to fix yourself, or just having a better relationship with your family, having a better relationship with your parents, having a better relationship with your wife if you're married, or your husband, or whatever the case may be. You might be ahead of them in some areas. So don't always judge stuff based on where somebody is versus where you are, because you are not the same person. So, It's just some things that you want to be aware of. You can't You can't always base your life on what somebody else is doing. Just keep pushing. Just keep pushing. All right, so I'm gonna play a little bit more. I was playing again for you, the late comers, the late risers. I was playing with this track that Daru Jones was playing the drums. He had this drag approach on this track. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. Got a notification. Let's see. What's your take on live volume practice versus breakdown? Bedroom low volume. Sorry. Leaving the parents' house, I lost the opportunity to do home practice with a volume. I mean, that shouldn't completely destroy your tone, your volume. To me, this is my opinion. So, granted, you're going to have to be able to hear your bass or your instrument in order to like be able to really dial in certain tones and get to know that instrument. But your tone shouldn't go completely down the drain because of lack of volume or too much volume. I know too much volume can cause you to distort and that kind of thing, and it can just be out of control. So there is some relevance to volume. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying, you develop tone in your hands first. The tone is in your hands first. So if you turn this bass all the way off, you can move. You can still develop tone with your hands. All you're doing with your volume and your, tone control and all that kind of stuff is you're just EQing it. You're EQing what's already there. Because all you're doing is amplifying the natural sound of this instrument. Whatever instrument you're on, with these buttons, you're just amplifying that sound, whatever that natural tone of that instrument is. So I think a lot of us use EQ and all that kind of stuff to make up the difference in what we think that bass is lacking, or the difference in what we lack in our hands and that kind of stuff. It took me a long time, and I'm still learning as I go about tone, because I, like a lot of people starting out, had no clue about tone. I just learned how to play when I got started. No clue about tone until I started playing professionally and people started talking to me and telling me about tone and that kind of thing. But the volume was like really never the issue, because worst case scenario, if you're in a place that you have to really be volume conscious, you always have the option of headphones. You can put some headphones on. Might not be as full as you would like for it to be in hearing a bass rig, but you should be able to get that same tone at a really, really low volume. If you have to turn the bass rig down really low, at least where you can hear it, you should still be able to get that same tone. Of course, as a bass player, the hotter we have the bass, the more we can feel it. And I think that's the biggest thing as a bass player, being able to feel what it is we're playing as opposed to hear it. We want to feel it, because a lot of times when I go places and I play and they are really funny about the stage volume, my issue about my tone is that I don't feel the low end. That's the issue that I have when it comes to stage volume, because whether you're in a live situation, you're always going to have to be, or a bedroom or something at somebody's house, you're always going to have to be mindful of your volume. And a lot of places, the more professional the environment is, the less likely they want you to have a big rig on stage pumping. So you can't always base it solely on the volume of your rig that you have. You know what I'm saying? We would love to be in a place where we can hear ourselves great, but a lot of the major stages that I played on, many times I've had to bring my stage volume way down and have to rely on my headphones. And I just use just a little bit. There's so many different things that have been created now. Like there are little pads. Some of you guys can help me here, but there's, you know, little pads that you can stand on that's supposed to emulate the vibrations from the bass, that kind of thing. And from the low end, I don't really like those. I don't like those at all. And I've been in situations where another thing I can do is have my rig facing my ears. Instead of your rig being on the stage like we normally traditionally do, bass players sit your rig behind you and just point it at everybody and have it crunk up. If you have a situation where you're running through the house, how about instead of facing your rig towards the audience, if you're sitting like how I'm facing now, I may have my rig sitting next to me, facing me, or at least have it where I can hear it and I can feel it. Or have there's been times that my rig is sitting right behind me just so I can feel it, you know, but off to the sides, because your ears are to the sides, is sometimes better. Facing you, facing away from the audience, if you have that control to be able to do that, you know what I'm saying? So being able to have those options of being able to control that sound, be able to control that tone, and as long as you can hear and feel what it is you're doing, you know what I'm saying? Because you can work through your tone with headphones, as I said before. You just want to be able to feel it a little bit and make sure it's not overbearing or that kind of thing. Just have enough of it where you can feel it, and just put some headphones in if you need to do that. Because to be honest, like I said, you're going to run into that on the bigger stages that you play on, especially if you do anything that involves TV. They're definitely going to want a controlled sound. So your stage volume has to come way, way down, and you're going to be depending on your ears. And some good custom mode or some good, you know, headphones or something like that can also work with helping you to be able to deal with those situations where you have to have low volume. Get some headphones that really pick up the low end really well and just work through it. Just work through it. We can always make the adjustments. So whatever that thing is that's kind of bothering you or holding you back, we can always work around it. So it didn't have to be super loud for you to have great tone. Dear Jermaine, thank you for your help. Do you have any suggestion about the connection between the drums and the bass? Thank you. Very Merry Christmas. Drums and the bass, absolutely. The drums and the bass go hand in hand. Bacon and eggs, sausage and biscuit, you know, Kool-Aid and water. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm being silly this morning. It's Christmas time. But yeah, drums and bass, they definitely go hand in hand. They're kind of married together, especially when it comes to most genres of music. You always want to pay attention to what the drummer is doing as a bass player, because you guys are setting the foundation as to what's happening. Like this song here. Like I came up with that bass line that you're hearing just playing around, listening to what he was doing on the drums. Because this is just, I mean, the song originally has no drums, like I said that earlier. The song is a cappella, but just listening to what he was doing, it suggested to me the type of groove I'm gonna play. Because he took the approach of real swing, dragging swing, neo soul type feel. This is a really peculiar type of style. It's not the traditional, just a slow swing. It's like a swing style, and it's dragging. So not dragging like breathing, dragging. I'm sorry, y'all. I get a lot of comments about my dialect and how I talk and all that kind of. I'm Southern. I make no excuses about it. Proud to be a Southern boy. So he's dragging it on top of having a swing feel on it. So my bass has to match what it is he's doing. I don't have to completely drag it, but I have to be aware that when I start coming up with my bass line. So I have to really be listening to everything that he's doing. The snare, the hi-hats, the bass drum, all that. So the first thing that comes to mind as a bass player is always his bass drum. Now, I don't have to match verbatim what he's doing, but that's a good starting point to get something to come up with. So it's so many different ways I can go with it simply just by listening to what the drummer is doing. To me, I don't think you can really build a groove correctly if you're not paying attention rhythmically to what the drummer is doing and you are a bass player. I mean, everybody, the drummer is literally setting the foundation for where we're going with this groove, what we're trying to do. And in a live situation, like there have been many times that we've learned the album the way it goes, but the drummer starts doing something different in a good way. The drummer starts doing something different, and it just causes you to think different. Oh man, I didn't even think about doing that. And so you switch the groove in the moment because you're listening. But if you're so on your own thing, you're only tuned into yourself and what you're playing, you're not going to catch that. You're not going to be inspired to create anything because you're only listening to yourself. And so you definitely have to be listening to the drummer in order to have a good idea of where you could go with that groove. Let's see here. All right, what do you use to come with your tone, your feel? Does this have to do with the technique or how you approach notes and sound, palm muting, hammering on, playing half step note, etc.? What do I use? Like I was saying just then, just using the inspiration of what's going on. Like, you have to have a reference point. So you kind of have to have a big musical palette, because a lot of this stuff you're not going to come up with on your own. If you haven't been listening to a lot of music, you haven't been paying attention to what's happening in the music, it's going to be rare that you're going to come up with this stuff on your own. So a lot of the stuff we do come up with on our own, but it's inspired by something. You have to be inspired by something. Almost everybody that created something, like I'll use Victor Wooten for example. So much of the stuff that he does on bass that he's so famous for, the tapping, he was inspired by his brother playing piano. So that's how he kind of got into the tapping, because he was trying to mimic what he heard his brother do on the piano. And with the thumping and the plucking and that kind of thing, obviously it came from his brother that plays the drum and his other brother that was teaching him, Reggie, that was teaching him how to play. But the thumping and the plucking came from, other influences like, Larry Graham and those guys who were also doing the thumping, but the different type of rhythm things that he was coming up with was based on stuff he was trying to mimic from hearing a drummer do. And other records and things like that he would listen to, and so on. So many other things, the melodic things that he was doing, mimicking the saxophone that his other brother played. And so all of those different elements work together to create what he came up with as a style. The muting bass oftentimes came as a result of bass players trying to get that same upright bass sound. They noticed that they could do certain things. You know what I'm saying? They found it okay, I can kind of mimic that sound. Even for a lot of us coming up, what like for me, a lot of music that I began to play when I got to Atlanta, it had like an R&B feel to it, and it had this really synthy sound to it. So I started finding different ways of getting that synth type sound on my bass without having to play key bass, simply by doing stuff like moving the position of my right hand, doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? Doing different stuff like that. Just taking it and like moving my hands, changing the position of my hands, doing little articulation things. And what I'm doing there is trying to mimic a keyboard on the bass. I'm not necessarily getting any pedals. I didn't add anything. I just changed the position of my hands, doing little stuff. You know what I'm saying? Bending. Like using what keyboard players would use, the pitch bend, in order to get certain sounds. I'm like, okay, I don't have a pitch bend, so how can I mimic that sound? You know, like they would do this, sliding, that kind of thing. Exactly, Moog style. You know what I'm saying? Just finding different things. So to answer your question, you just listen to the things that inspire you and try to recreate those things that you're hearing. It's all through trial and error. And the more you try to start experimenting on those things, you'll find that other people tried it too. And then you can kind of look up, okay, I can find a video more about palm muting and how I better do this. But it has to start with being inspired to even try to find out, because other than that, how do you even know to look for it? So situations, circumstances that inspire you to look for these things, that's, you know what I'm saying? That's how you kind of work through that stuff. All right. I'm trying to see what else. All right, bass face, that bass line. What are some useful tips on creating licks and feels like you used to when demonstrating the relationship between the drum and the bass? What are some useful tips? Same thing. Trying to recreate what you hear. One of the things I said in many lessons ago was singing when you play. Trying to sing. If you don't sing, worth anything, that's okay. You don't have to be the best singer in the world, but being able to mimic what you hear, like really, really working on ear training. Listen to stuff that's way out of your comfort zone. All right. So like, I started listening to a lot of when I was first getting into jazz, I was listening to I didn't even get introduced to George Benson till like way later. I started listening to y'all gonna think this is funny. This is around the time that we had like satellite, like, when you go up past, like, if you had satellite way back in the day, you go up to the music channels, the live streaming music channels. I didn't even know who the artists were. When I started getting an interest in jazz and I started playing guitar, I was hearing these channels that were on, I guess, streaming. Well, it wasn't even streaming, it was just satellite. The music artist, somebody helped me out with the name. I don't know what it was called back then, but you can hear all the smooth jazz artists and the big band and all this kind of stuff. I was listening to these different artists and I was hearing all this stuff. It made no sense to me when I first heard it. I thought it was gibberish. So I started trying to mimic what I was hearing. And it made no sense for like the first few years until I just started listening more and more and more. And what happened is I began to understand certain things. The more I advanced on my instrument, I began to understand things a little bit more and it started to make sense to me. So the understanding came by hearing it over and over and over and over again. Because here's the thing, I see a lot of people jump straight into the technical parts of playing. Like, okay, this is being able to name chords. Yeah, this is the Dorian mode, and this is the Phrygian mode, and the Mixolydian, and being able to name all this technical stuff, but you have no idea how to use it in the context. But you have all the names to all this technical stuff. To me, that's good that you know that, but I think it's more effective that you hear first. You hear it. It's easier to learn, I feel like, something new or learn a new word when you hear it in context. You hear it in context as opposed to sitting in a classroom and they're trying to feed you. Because it happened with me. When I was learning theory, when I was in college, and I was kind of stretching and getting into more understanding the music, I had the watercolors. Thank you, Michael. Watercolors, that was it. So, all right, so when I was in these classes taking theory, man, I couldn't make this stuff out for the life of me because they were giving me notes on paper. And even the teacher would go to the board and play something out. And like, this is what this is. And he played out, and it still wouldn't make sense to me because it was never in the context of music. They didn't like pick out a record and start playing a record for us and say, okay, you hear what this person just did there, and pause the tape and then spell it out. It would just be just random in the middle of nothing. Okay, if you have 4 flats and all this kind of stuff, this is what this is. It made no sense to me. But when you put it in the context of music, I learned it. And then I went back after taking theory and passing theory. I went back and learned this stuff in the context of music. And after I learned it and was playing it and executing it, and I needed to go back and name it for the sake of teaching people, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's a Dorian. Oh, that's, it made more sense to me because I had been playing it and I had it in the context of music. So to answer your question again, I think you need to go and listen to as much music as you can. Open your palette up so that you can have a lot more music in your head. So when you have something to say, you have a reference point to say it from. It does you no good to have a whole bunch of information and you just want to tell everybody everything about everything you know, but there's no reference point. It doesn't even have anything to do with the conversation anybody is talking about. You want to tell me that George Washington chopped down a cherry tree. Man, we're over here talking about apple pies. Like, that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. So when you just dish out too much information that has nothing to do with the subject, sometimes you can lose people. But if you understand the context of the music and you've listened to that music enough, now when they give you an opportunity to say something, your statement can be relevant to what everybody else musically is talking about because you've listened and you've taken in that music, and you learn a little bit more as you go. You can dig in a little bit more to the subject, but when you have taken in enough of that music and you put in the time practicing, listening and applying, you can go and look up what it's called and all that kind of stuff. I don't believe in, me personally, I might get, flung or hung by the purists when it comes to music theory, but I don't feel like you need to have all the information first. I don't. I feel like sometimes you just need to jump in there. You need to listen. You need to jump in there and try it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just having all the technical things that you have to do and it has to be called this. And I don't feel like all of that's necessary in order for you to learn how to start doing it. I think you should listen to it, get it under your hands, get it under your head where you understand it. Even if you don't let me rephrase it, even if you don't fully understand it, have it in your mind, or at least be able to hear it so you have something to pull from. It's like, I don't necessarily know what this means, but I've heard it on enough bebop albums, just for example. So, a little line like that. Back in the day, I couldn't play that for nothing. I could hear it, but I couldn't play it. But the more and more I heard it, the more and more it locked into my brain. So that became as common to me as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So you take little small concepts like, some of y'all might think that's funny, but if you take something that simple, start working through how to play what I'm hearing in my head, take it out of my head and put it under my hands. Start with a small little concept like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, something that simple. And now you're starting to take a little concept like Donna Lee, you know. What is it? You know what I'm saying? It's been years since I played that, but still having it in my head, I can fish around and find it. You know what I'm saying? Because I listened to it enough that it got stuck in my head. So if I slow it down in my head, I can start picking the notes out. And so now, so it'll be just like that. You see how I'm fishing through here trying to figure it out, and you'll start doing the same thing. Making my mind go back and find the notes that I'm looking for. And that's what you do in practice time. You spend that time, you look for that stuff after you've heard it in your head and you got it in your mind, and you spend time figuring it out. Or you can take the record and make it a lot simpler. Take the record and just do it over and over again. That's the same thing. The same process we're taking when we're listening to a record. Play a few seconds of it, go back, transcribing what I was talking about earlier. Take a little bit of that, figure it out, go back. Play it again. Make sure you got it. Go back. Play it again. Don't be so quick to rush to the end of the record. Take a little bit by little bit. I'm just going off memory at this point. That's why I'm struggling. But just take a little bit by little bit. And what I'm saying, you don't have to completely memorize songs, but being able to memorize context and being able to understand the language in context. I'm giving y'all some long-winded answers, and I apologize for that. But y'all asking some great questions, though. Let's see here. All right. Man, I missed a whole bunch of stuff. All right. Thanks for the answers. I did go to see Eric Gale's great show. Man, Eric Gale's is a monster. Good stuff. You got to go see him. Watercolors, yep. That was the Smooth Jazz channel. Yep. I appreciate that, Michael. Do you know many 4-string players in black churches besides Thaddeus Tribbett? Thinking about switching to a 4-string P bass. Thanks, man. Love your channel. Alex, there are several bass players that play 4-string. The reason why most bass players play 4-string in gospel, because gospel music really pulls heavily on that low B flat. That's really the reason why most players play. And not just that B flat, but that range, that lower range. In gospel music, you almost, I'm not going to say you have to have that low B string, but so many of the songs pull on that low B string with the low E flat, the low D flat. I mean, of course you can get E flat with the 4-string. You can tune down and get it E flat. But that low D flat, you know, that low C, that low, you know, all those notes past that E flat going down, the gospel music pull on that so much, and that's why so many people use 5 strings in gospel music, and just to have that beefiness of that low end. Now, there's nothing wrong with 4-string bass. Obviously, Thaddeus has proven that you can get away with using a 4-string in gospel music and be totally fine. Another person, I think I saw, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me wrong, but Swole, he was playing with Kirk Franklin, and he was killing it on a 4-string, and I mean, it didn't sound like he was missing anything. Of course, I've seen him on other records. I think the Marvin Sapp, a few records for Marvin Sapp that he played, and I think he was playing a 5-string. But he's another one that was playing a 4-string and was killing it. So you don't have to be restricted to anything. The choice is yours, what you decide to play. Just know what your limitations are when you pick these instruments up, and just be prepared to work around them. A lot of the things that I saw Thaddeus Tribbett do, and I talked about this before, when he was playing with Tide, certain things he would do to make up for that low B string would be stuff like, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like doubling up on an octave. So here, where I'm playing in B position or B flat position, that's your B flat if you don't have that low B string. So that would be your B flat. But what Thaddeus would do would be, you would double up by playing fifths. And that would give it'll almost give the same aggression as having that low B string. So I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna turn my bass up and do it again. You see what I'm saying? It's really gritty. It's not as quite low as in decibels, but it has the same aggression in the context of the music and everybody's playing. It almost has that same aggression without as much low end as the low B string. So you can get away with it. It's just learning tricks to work around those notes that you don't have. So yeah. Let's see here. All right. Somebody said, hey, how are you feeling? How can I keep, I'm good, David G. How can I keep the deep bass tone when soloing melodically, especially when playing fast runs? People tell me that when I'm playing runs, they sometimes can't hear me playing. To be honest, when you're taking solos, you almost kind of want to get away in a sense, unless you're playing like slapping stuff and you're playing on more stuff in the lower register. You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on what you're doing, if you're playing finger style stuff and you're playing lower notes, sometimes the problems I used to have when I would take solos is it could sound muddy to the audience, especially when it's coming through the house and the sound man doesn't have you EQ'd right. It could be horrible. It just sound like you're just playing underwater, and people can't really make out the notes that you're doing. So if you're not slapping or if you're not playing higher up in octave, they're not really understanding what you're playing anyway. You're just looking like you're having a great time up there playing who knows what, because nobody can hear it. Nobody can hear it clearly. So I would say to something that I do, you can take it and do whatever you want to with it, but I'm paying attention to my hand placement. Most of the time when I'm playing, my hand, I don't necessarily float over the back pickup a lot. I'm generally floating in between. That's when you guys are hearing me soloing and doing that kind of stuff, I'm most of the time floating in between these two pickups. That's just the natural place where my hand falls, and that's a tone that I can live with. So, and as well, I'm splitting, depending on the bass I'm playing, I'm splitting the pickups with my pickup combination. And I might, if I want a little bit more clarity to my tone, I might roll more when I'm playing fingerstyle soloing. I might roll a little bit more to my back pickup, just a little bit. So let's say if I have, I might roll just so it cuts a little bit more. Of course, this bass is not fair because, I mean, it has great tone no matter what. But if I'm on a bass that doesn't have as much clarity when it comes to my high end, I'm gonna roll off and roll a little bit more to the back pickup, just a little bit more, so I can get a little bit more clarity as to what I'm doing. Because for me, I always have that low end. As long as I'm, have my bass boosted or whatever the case may be, I'm gonna have that low end there. The presence is gonna be there because my highs are generally up. I'm generally having my highs boosted, unless it's just overbearing, and then I'll cut back on my highs. But as far as clarity, I'll sometimes, for my own personal tone, this might not work for everybody, but for my own personal tone, I'll roll back a little bit to that back pickup. And I won't go all the way over the back pickup when I'm playing. I just roll back there just so that tone is coming out a little bit more. What's up, Jan? So that's what I do when it comes to me, just trying to get clarity and that kind of thing. All right. I'm so behind on these questions. Somebody said amen, and I know that was probably like 20 minutes ago. I love listening to Wayman Tisdale. Trying to do what he does is a task, and I bring my bass to church and try to play by ear. But gospel music is a beast to learn. Yeah, it's definitely hard for a rookie, depending on what you're playing in gospel music. What is it I'm working on currently? What is it that I'm working on currently? Oh, you said this is what I'm working on currently, playing what you said. Oh, you was responding to something I said earlier. I got you. Donna Lee, yep, I was massacring Donna Lee earlier. just like a library that you have created. Yep. Makes sense. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. You tune standard. I tune standard when I'm teaching. I tune standard only when I'm teaching. When I'm just doing my own thing, I'm tuned flat to B flat. Good day. Regarding your congregational course, I can't even read right now. Regarding your congregational course, are those songs similar to something like "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," "Amazing Grace," "Be Thou My Vision"? Those particular songs on the course aren't necessarily like slow songs. They are more upbeat. You can hear actually in the congregational songs promo, you can hear the backing track that's playing in the background. It's like a glorious day, living, he loved me, and he saved me, buried, he carried my sins far away. You know, it's like more upbeat congregational songs, and kind of how to navigate around those type songs that follow that very similar pattern. We didn't necessarily go into, you know, amazing grace. We didn't do that, you know what I'm saying? We didn't go to the old school back in the day songs, but I can thank you for bringing that up. I might need to do another course where we cover some of the more slower traditional songs, and I might look into creating another course that we actually cover that more traditional stuff so that you can have a better idea. So in this particular course though, it's a little bit more upbeat, and everything is there in terms of the backing track, so you can play it in context. What this congregational song course is basically a loop of all these songs, and some people have complained about, and I'm just being honest, some people complain about it being, man, I thought the songs were going to be longer. And I'm like, well, what you have to understand when it comes to congregational music, it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same thing. Once you get the immediate structure, the first 16 bars of the song, everything else repeats. And so it's the same thing. And what I'm doing in this course, it's not necessarily trying to teach you all of the songs, but teaching you the main structure of the songs. And once you have the structure of the songs, you being able to navigate in and out of these different things, and being able to know, okay, this is another approach I can do. This is a little something I can add here. Okay, this is how this song, you know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily we're spending time, okay, this is how this song goes. And then when we get to the vamp, there's like, for the most part, all of these songs pretty much do the same thing. All right, so let's see here. Izzy Bass, what's up, Morgan? How can I find 1 minute? How can I for a minute nonstop? How can I for a minute nonstop? I'm not sure what you're asking, Izzy. Good morning, bro. I think I spoke to you, Jan. Hey, Jermaine, thanks for the opportunity. Could you discuss situations where it's appropriate to play notes other than the roots, like sitting on a third of the chord? Thanks, bro. Especially in gospel music, George, to answer your question, in gospel music, you can really get away with subbing. You're talking about subbing notes, using sub notes, or using alternate, you know, chord tones. So like, I'm trying to give you an example. So just say if we're starting on the 1, you don't have to start on the 1 every single time. So you can start on the 3. And it's really one of them things. It's not a set place that you have to do that. It's just picking your moments. You say, where's appropriate? I would say, I would let the first half of the song, just to try to give a quick answer to you, I would let the first part of the song breathe. Generally, if I'm going to start subbing notes, I don't sub in the intro, unless it's one of those songs that we played the intro 1,000 times. I try to play the intro as is. I might add a little stuff or a little fill-ins here and there, depending on what it is. The first verse of the song, I try to let it breathe. First chorus, I might add just a little something in there. Once we get to the second verse, second chorus, and on out, all of that is open playground. You know what I'm saying? Now you can start kind of really playing. This is my personal opinion, especially in gospel music, unless we've already flipped the groove altogether. But if somebody's trying to stay as close to the record as possible. When it comes to playing gospel music, I try to keep it as original as possible, and as I get through the song and get to about the second verse, that's when I'll start adding a little bit more and start stretching out a little bit more in terms of adding chord note substitutions and that kind of thing. I try to add that later on in the song after the foundation has been established. So to answer your question, after the foundation has been established in a song, now you can start adding little stuff here and there like chord substitutions and that kind of thing after the foundation has been really established. And I think any MD or any music person will respect you more for that. Because if you come in there sounding like you're changing the song, and then the other thing I want to note this as well. If the song has really iconic parts in it that people are looking for, you have to make sure that you don't replace those parts with your own parts, especially if you're new to the situation. Now, if you played the song with this particular group a lot and they have gave you free reign, but do whatever you do. But if you're new to a group and the song has like pretty staple parts in it, like when it gets to you know what I'm saying? You don't change that part. If you're playing I'll Take You There, you don't change. Everybody knows as a bass player, there's certain like staple parts of songs. You don't just start. I don't care how good you are. It's like you take away at some point. When you start adding too much of your own thing over something that's like really staple, that really made the song, everybody knows that song for. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows the song for those certain parts in songs. So I would stay away from trying to do your thing over staple parts of the song. You know what I'm saying? So like try to be aware of the song that you're playing and pick your spots around certain things that happen in the song. Like do I do? You know what I'm saying? Certain things in the song, you leave them alone. You leave them as is and you play around it. So I wouldn't sub everything or replace something with my own thing thinking it's better if this song was already a hit because of certain staple moments. So that's my only disclaimer in that. So, all right, let's see. All right, man, I'm missing stuff. Okay. And what about Alan Caron's approach to slapping? How would you slap quadruplets? David, that ain't even like, I don't even really deal with that too much. I mean, I don't put a lot of, that's personal preference. Like at the end of the day, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into that question because that ain't something I mean, if I do it, like I really very rarely ever do quadruplets. I do like triplets. That's just not my thing. So it's like if you want to get into that, it's just your personal preference of what works for you. Because it's very rare that I'm getting into a song and slapping it and it's gonna be asking for that, or I want to put like a quadruplet slap in it. So me personally, it really doesn't. It's really not a thing for me. So I can't really elaborate too much on that. Thanks. I'll look forward to that. How can I run scales for a minute nonstop? Practicing getting it up under your hands. I used to struggle with that, but I had to get a little bit more information. You said, how can I run scales for a minute? I mean, that's literally turning the metronome on and working out, doing it slow, consistently over and over again, and working it up to speed and getting it wherever you need to get it. That's a simple practice thing, Izzy. That's going to be a good adjustment for being able to do it nonstop. if I'm understanding your question correctly. Good morning, North Carolina. A. Hester, I know you spoke like way while ago. That lick was sick, but yeah, I have no idea what lick you're referring to, but thank you. Can you speak a bit about growing beyond one's environment? How should a musician in a town with almost musicians? All right, I think, because I'm way over. I'm gonna have to put a pin in that one. Both the last two questions, do you recommend short scale bass guitars? That's pretty much preference as well, um, depending on what you're looking for. Merry Christmas. Thank you for the answer, David G. No problem. Can you speak about growing beyond one's environment? How this will be my last question. How should a musician in a town? And I don't really want to get into this because I dealt with it on several broadcasts before, and you may be new to my broadcast, but I have dealt with this with that question. How should a musician in a town with almost no musicians, or a church with musicians who are not driven, pursue growth? You have to be your own self motivator. That's the short answer. If you're not around anybody, now with internet, you almost, I get your surroundings affecting you, but you have to make a decision. Am I going to allow myself to be affected by my surroundings? Or it's like a better way of saying it. Am I going to be a thermometer or a thermostat? You have to answer that question. Let me see who wrote that again. Emmanuel, you have to answer that question. Are you going to be a thermometer or are you going to be a thermostat? Are you going to be the one that sets the temperature for what it is that's happening around you? Which means I don't need to come in a room and have somebody prime me, or I don't need to have somebody to motivate me to make me want to practice to get better. I want to get better because I want to get better. I want to be better. I want to grow because I want to be the one. What's up, Joel? I want to be the one, you know what I'm saying? I want to grow because I want to grow. Because what you're asking me is basically how I grew up. That's how I grew up. I grew up around an area. There was some cool musicians, but like I said, there were no professionals where I'm from. People weren't doing music for a living. Like where I'm from, man, people had 9 to 5s, and at best somebody was playing for a quartet group here or there. I didn't personally know any professional musicians that was all they did was stay on the road and do this. And if I did know them, they didn't have any time for you, you know. So I had to make up in my own mind, I want to be better than this. There got to be, it's a personal motivation thing. And you decide, I'm going to be the thermostat. I'm going to set what it is. I'm not going to be a thermometer that's always kind of going with what everybody else is doing or the lack thereof. So there's nobody else around me that's pushing me. So what? You push you. You be the one who pushes you. If you want this thing, I'm going to tell you something about this music game. It ain't for the faint of heart. And the higher you go, the harder you got to work. There's nothing easy about this. Everybody, because of the YouTube mentality, everybody wants everything given to them. Like you guys are having access to me to ask these questions because it all goes back to the topic I started back with. What's your own value? What's your worth? What are you worth? How do you determine your own value? What are you doing to raise your own personal value? So when people come to you, you have something of value to offer them. What are you doing to raise your own personal value? If you're a thermometer, I can guarantee you, if you are a thermometer, then your value is probably low. However, if you are a thermostat, then you got a higher value off the top because you're changing the tone of the room in a positive way. Let me say that. If you're a thermostat in a positive way, when you come in the room, I ain't talking about you make the room cold when you come in there, but I'm talking about when you come in, if you raise the level of everybody's energy, everything, just by your professionalism, your enthusiasm, and everything you bring to the table, you're raising your own value. You're raising your worth when you do that. But when you stay where you are and you wait on everybody else to do something, then your value is very low. You're replaceable. We can find somebody else to replace you. We can find somebody else to do your job. And you're probably not going to last long as a working musician. You'll find something, a little something to keep you going. You probably stay at the same level if you don't push yourself to raise your own personal value. That's one thing I'm telling you. This music game is not for the faint at heart. If you're going to do this thing seriously, you got to put everything in it. You have to put everything in it, and you have to be willing to be embarrassed. You have to be willing to, put in some hours that everybody else isn't putting in. And you have to just be willing to adjust. Be willing to adjust on the fly, because there's gonna be a lot of stuff that you don't understand. There's gonna be a lot of stuff that you don't know in order to survive in this new music world, because it's so easy to replace you. Now it's so easy to replace you. There are samples, sample packs, all this kind of stuff. There are loop lofts, you know what I'm saying? All of this different stuff that people have created to replace musicians. And I don't fault these people for creating these things. I think it's dope. But at the same time, it's causing musicians now that have gotten lazy because of things like YouTube, it's causing musicians to raise your own personal value up. So you can't get mad if somebody else gets your gig. If you're not putting in the work, you can't get mad if somebody else is showing up an hour before you do, knowing the music, being sweet with everything. Or somebody is getting called in on your gig to come and do the big stuff because you're not showing up and you're not showing that you can actually execute. If you're not putting in the work, you can't get mad. So you have to raise your own personal value up to the point to people say, I can't bring anybody else in other than this dude right here, because I know what he's going to do. I know what he's going to deliver. So I'm not chancing bringing anybody else but him. In my position, there are certain things that I get called to do by some well-known, people or well-known organizations or well-known bass players, because I built my name, I built my value, I built my brand to a standard that they know what to expect when I show up. So they're not guessing what they're going to get. Man, is Jermaine going to come in here knowing the music? Is he going to be sweet with his stuff? Like, they know what to expect when I show up. I raise my personal value. So some people, I've even had the statement of, I was going to call you, but I didn't think I can afford you. Granted, that's not sweet always in a situation, because it's like, okay, I still would like to get the consideration for the gig, but it's a good thing that people think that I can't just pay you anything and you be okay with it. You raise your value to such a point that people know, all right, I know if I'm going to call this person right here, I got to come with it, because they're going to bring me excellence. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate that. But you know what I'm saying? You have to make sure you're bringing excellence in every area, and you become the thermostat and not the thermometer. You set the stage. You set your own bar for your own excellence. And that goes back to what I said earlier, making sure you're not comparing yourself against other people. Making sure you're not doing that. You got to know your own value. That's another thing about it. As you're raising your value, you got to know what you're worth. Stop accepting stuff that's under you, but make sure what you're charging, you're worth it. If you don't want to do $50 gigs no more, depending on where you live, and I know everybody's different. So I'm being mindful of what country you live in, the area you live in when there's not a music scene and all that kind of stuff. I'm being mindful of all of this different stuff. But if you're in situations where they have the ability to pay like a good amount of money for musicians, and you keep accepting these, like you just say, for instance, you live in a really music forward city where they pay musicians, they really pay musicians, and you keep accepting $50 and $75 gigs. Yeah, you got to eat. But at what point, and this is not because I know on Facebook there's been this whole thing about not doing $100 gigs, and there's been this whole debate about it. I'm not saying don't do gigs that pay $100. I'm saying be mindful of your own value. Sometimes you have to do things. You have to do things in order to take care of your business. You got a light bill, you got a car note, you got all this different stuff. I understand that. And you have to do what you have to do to take care of your business. So don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you not to do If that little $50 thing, you needed some gas for that week, don't feel embarrassed. Don't feel bad about doing that gig. So I want to be very, very clear. But that shouldn't be your standard. That's what I'm saying. That shouldn't be your standard. If you put in the work, you've put in the time, and you know that you're worth more than that, stop accepting everything that people offer you just for some little change. Stop accepting everything. If you're not finding the right set of situations that's giving you what you're looking for, create it. Create what you're looking for. Create what you're looking for. Don't wait for people to call you. If you know what you bring to the table, if you know your own value, prove it. Proof of concept. I'll leave this with you. I think like Oprah. When Oprah was trying to do TV way back in the day, they told her basically, you don't look right. You don't look the part. You're too heavy. You're too this. You're too that. And so Oprah, and I heard Eric Thomas talking about this. This is what reminded me of this the other day. He was talking about Oprah did whatever she needed to do to work on her own image. She didn't go have plastic surgery or anything like that, but she worked on losing the weight because she was a little more heavy at the time. And it was like, we don't think you're the right fit for TV. You'll do good on radio, but we don't think you're the right fit for TV. She knew she was. She knew her value, but she did the work that she needed to do in terms of, okay, maybe I need to work on my image. Not saying that something wrong with being heavy. I'm not saying that. But for what she was going for, okay, that's something that they were looking at. And if I want to be in this world, or if I want to be in this particular space, there's a certain thing that they're looking for, and there's a certain standard that they're expecting to uphold. So even if they don't let me in, it won't be because I didn't put in the work. You see what I'm saying? It won't be because I didn't lose the weight. It won't be because I didn't put in the time to practice. I might not look the part, but I'm gonna be so good, you're gonna feel really bad about turning me down. I'm gonna be really good. I'm gonna be really so good at what I do, you're gonna feel bad about turning me down. And everybody knows the rest of the history concerning Oprah. She's dominated that space. So much so that she owns her own network. So the very people that told her, we think you'll be better for TV, it's like, no, I'll go ahead and create my own network. Not my own show. I'll go ahead and create my own network. So obviously she made the change that she needed to make to get in the space that she needed to get to dominate, and then use that platform to create her own space. So now I can determine who comes in. I get to tell you who comes in. And now you fund me. You know what I'm saying? I get to tell you what happens past this point. So once you get that authority, because you learn your own value, you learn your own worth, now you get to make the calls. You get to call the shots. People don't get to tell you how much this gig is paying. No, you get to tell people, no, this is what I charge. So if you want me on this session, you want me on this gig, not being arrogant. I don't mean being arrogant. I mean, you get to tell people, okay, this is what I charge. Versus, no, this session is paying $75. No, I don't charge $75. I charge a little bit more than that. So if you want me to play on this session, I'm gonna need a little bit more than that. And if you decide to go a different route, it's cool. Here's the thing, guys. It's like 8 billion people on the planet. Like 8 billion people on the planet. So if you miss one opportunity with one person, that's not going to wreck your life. I don't care how big they are. I don't care how big this person is. I don't care what it looks like. I mean, it could be Quincy Jones for all I care. I don't care. Like, if this person is not willing to value, willing to acknowledge your value, you don't have to bend over backwards for people. I don't care who they are. You don't have to do that. If you're doing the stuff that's necessary for you to do, promotion does not come through man. I don't care what you believe. Promotion does not come through man. Now, a man can be used to give you promotion, but promotion does not come through man. Because there could be things that you can do. And I've worked with really prominent people in my career. A lot of stuff that I've done, I haven't talked about. And I won't. A lot of the stuff I have done, I won't talk about. I've been in rooms and been in situations with very prominent people, and I've done things in terms of like gave my gifting almost for free, thinking that it was going to make a difference in my career, and it did nothing. It did nothing for my career. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking like, oh, if I do this for this person, this gonna really change the game for me. If I play on this person's record, that's records I've played on, I don't even have credit for them. Major records. I didn't even get credit for it because I was so eager to just be a part of something, and I was hungry in my career, just thinking, man, if I do this, it's gonna change. It did nothing for my career. It gave me an experience of working in a major studio and doing this and doing that, but it did nothing for my career. So don't be basing your thoughts when you start lowering your value. Like, don't be so quick to trying to jump on the bandwagon of somebody because you think they're this or you think they're that. No, go work on your own personal value. Work on your own worth. Be worth your hire. Be worth your hire. Because when you do that and you work on your own value and that kind of thing, now, versus you coming in this situation like a beggar, they're asking you, you're being invited. Now they ask you questions like, hey man, how much would you charge me to be on this session? Now you get those kind of questions as opposed to, hey, I got this much money for this session. Come on, knock this bass out for me real quick. Nah, that's not how it works. See, once I raise my value, I get to control the conversation. Plain and simple. So I went way over time. And I really appreciate you guys for rocking with me. I hope you've really gotten something good from this. And if you did, be sure to share this with somebody. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention before I get off of here, I need y'all's help supporting this channel. If you're enjoying the content, especially y'all that ask all the questions, right below this video, you'll see merch. You can see merch. You can see I have sweaters. I have phone cases. I mean, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. Look below. You'll see it below this video where you can purchase any of my merchandise. And for those of you who have already been purchasing stuff, thank y'all so much. I really, really appreciate it. It helps me to create more content because, you know, this is what I do. You know, I create this content, I do other things, but in terms of creating these videos, in terms of giving you my time live, I went way more time. I do charge for my time because I know my own value, but I ask for you guys, if you can, give somebody with some Jermaine Morgan brand stuff. I got a new thing that I launched. It's the silhouette. It's the silhouette stuff, so you can grab it. It doesn't have my name on it, but it does have the silhouette. Like I got hoodies, shirts, all that kind of stuff that you can check out. So be sure to go to my store, store after this video. Be sure to click on it and check out some of my merchandise. If you want to check out some of my courses online, there is a coupon code that I have sent out, JMCH25, that you can use right now on my website, and you can get any of my websites, not websites, you can get any of my courses up till today is Christmas Eve, so up till tomorrow, you can get any of my courses for 25% off, including the monthly membership, including the membership plus. You can lock it in right now for 25% off. That coupon code is JM, capital J, capital M, capital CH. So Jermaine Morgan Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Capital J, capital M, capital C, capital H, 25. Put that coupon code in. Anything on my website, you can get it at 25% off. Use that same coupon code on my store when you buy your merchandise and get 25% off now through Christmas. You got one day, so give somebody with this stuff. Other than that, man, I really appreciate you guys hanging out, watching this video, and I pray that I've given you something that was helpful for you all. I'm gonna read through a couple of the comments. If there's questions, I can't answer the questions today. Any more questions today? But let's see here. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Morgan. Great answer. All right, preach, bro. Good morning. I can't get away from the C scale. All right, I can't get that on the day. And you're a dope. All right. I'm a drummer, but you give great info for me to share with my 12-year-old son. Willie, thank you so much. And hopefully I'll continue to do that. That's right, bro. I find that consistency is very important. Absolutely. Quether, if I'm saying your name right, appreciate the support. Luda, appreciate you being here. You've been talking since you've been on here. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate this. I welcome y'all to talk. Amen. What an encouragement. Thank you, Sheldon. I just tuned in like 5 minutes, but my brother, you better preach. Brandon, thank you so much. Sheldon, there have to be an even balance. Absolutely. Wise words make sense. Thanks a lot for showing love. No problem. We appreciate it, brother. Hey, it's my pleasure. And again, thank you all for watching this. And do me a huge favor. Do my family a huge favor. Go ahead and purchase some Jermaine Morgan gear. Some Jermaine Morgan courses. If you don't know about my website, it's jermainemorgan.net. Just like my name is spelled Jermaine. Morgan.net, and go on there and buy up some stuff. Go check out the courses. Oh yeah, and if you want more of this one-on-one kind of stuff, I do coaching calls. If you want to set up a coaching call, you can even get those at 25% off to set up your coaching call session with me, so we can talk one-on-one with what you're dealing with and see if I can help you come up with the solution for whatever it is you're dealing with, whether it's family, whether it's music, whether it's career, whatever. Let's talk about it, and I would love to share some wisdom, some insight, some things that I've learned over the years. I would love to share that with you guys, and so I invite you all to to go do that on the website. And what else was I going to say? There was something else I was going to mention. Be productive and multiply. It's a course. It's a 7-day course that I created on my website that I really break down and tell you guys how I was able to do a lot of the things and raise my own personal value, the stuff that we've talked about today. This course is called Be Productive and Multiply. I'm in my studio right now, y'all. That's what you're seeing. I was just in that room in there. But be productive and multiply. That's what you want to do. You want to know more about that, you can get that course for, it's like $37.99 plus 25% off of that. It's already discounted, but this price, I'm telling y'all, get it now, because this price will go up first of the year, or I think after Christmas. This price will no longer be that low, and it will go up to like way higher than that. I'm just telling y'all, it's on sale now, and you can get it for an additional 25% off. So if you're gonna get that course, it's a 7-day course. I give you my insight on what I did and some things you can do to literally change stuff, start raising your own value. Not only that, start creating some things that generates money for you to do what you need to do. Take advantage of it now. So that's all I'm gonna share with y'all today. I gotta go. My family is out here. Y'all always see me in the same spot. Be productive and multiply. When you be productive and multiply, sky is the limit, y'all. That's my house over there. This is the studio that I'm still working on. I'm showing y'all this for a reason. The sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. Where I'm standing at right now, and I'm supposed to be off of here, but I'm sharing this for somebody because somebody needs this. Where I'm standing at right now was all a dream for me. It was my dream to have my own studio one day, and it's a work in progress. It's cold over here because I'm still working on this building, but this is the other part of my studio that I never really come in. We're still working on this room here. You know what I'm saying? It's a work in progress, but this whole building is dedicated to my studio. And this is where I come and work. I come film my videos. I come do all of this different stuff. I don't show all of this stuff because I don't ever want the title of bragging or anything like that. But I do want you guys to know I know what I'm talking about. And I'm living what I'm talking about. I'm going to spin something around. I'm going to show y'all something. My dream was to own property. And, you know, have my home and own property and all this different kind of stuff. I'm going to show y'all something. I'm going to spin this camera around. So from my window all the way out there, you can see the road way out there. That's my property. Why am I showing this? When you raise your value, you start seeing things that you dreamed about happen. When you stop accepting what people give you, you start seeing the things you dream about happen for you. You start seeing the things you dream about and the things that you've been imagining. You start realizing those things, and they happen for you. They happen for you, and you don't take no for an answer. And you make these things you draw them to you when you start like putting feet and putting action to it. So I encourage you. You want to know how I did it? Go and pick up that course. Be productive and multiply. This is not me shucking and jiving and telling y'all something that I'm not living. I saw one of your other videos with you. You're happy for you, man. Appreciate that, man. And again, I only show that to people to just show them that anything is possible. I'm a musician. I'm a working musician. Most of y'all know most musicians, we don't make a lot of money as musicians. And I'm not saying I've made a lot of money, but I've made better decisions in my life, and I've changed certain things. And because of that, I was able to raise my own personal value. And I had to start thinking differently. I had to stop thinking like a musician and start thinking like a owner, a business owner. I gotta put my sweater on before I go outside. But yeah, I had to start thinking like a businessman instead of always thinking like a musician. Yeah, so let me since y'all are still on here and I'm supposed to be off, let me grab my Mr. Rogers sweater right quick before I go outside, because it's cold out there. But I'm telling you guys, if you start putting something to those thoughts other than just sitting there, waiting on things to magically change, you got to start doing the work. You put in the work, put in the time, and things will literally start changing for you. I'm going to walk out of here. My Wi-Fi in this building might disconnect. And so if we get disconnected, we'll see y'all. But if not, appreciate y'all. So, yeah, you see that building is still a work in progress. But yeah, I'm showing y'all this stuff for a reason. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. So go grab that course. Be productive and multiply. Be productive and multiply. Anything is possible. Merry Christmas to y'all. I hope y'all have a very, 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 very happy Christmas. And if some of y'all don't see me until next year, which I doubt that, have a very happy and prosperous new year. Go pick up that course. Be productive. Multiply. I'll see y'all. Peace.